Okay, video, YouTube started, so that's it.
Okay, so should we continue then?
Okay, go on.
All right, so we're going to continue with our Jürgen Fest. It's a pity that we cannot make it in person, but at least this is good that we have a chance to hear about all the work that has been happening around Jürgen and colleagues. It's been nice to hear about it. So the next speaker is Dr. Augusto Ceccucci. He started his studies in Ferrara, Italy, where he worked as a spokesman.
Torino. Never mention Ferrara. Never. Torino.
Sorry, Torino. Okay. He was a spokesman of NA 48-2 since 2002 and of NA 62 until 2018. And actually, he's a permanent researcher at CERN. So thank you, Dr. Ceccucci. Thank you very much for attending this celebration, and the microphone is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. And let me now share the, all right, so I hope you can hear me. It's a great honor to be here to celebrate Jürgen. And there are this symposium distinguished speakers, Professor Wagner, Professor Paul, many others, Professor Cooper after me. It's a great honor. So in the next 20-25 minutes, I will tell you how proud I am to have been collaborating with Jürgen doing rare chaos decays. And I wish to thank Nora for providing some of the pictures that you will see. So let me start. And rare chaos decays, and it's, as you can see, rare chaos decays is a field of research which is very young. It's even younger than Jürgen. You see that the significant tests, the first tests were in the mid 60s, late 60s, and there's always been a very elegant physics. I can see some references here. And rare chaos decays have been historically important to investigate the absence of flavor change in neutral currents, one of the pillars of the standard model. They are important. We study them because they are sensitive to genuine higher order electroweak corrections. So you're really testing stress in the standard model in deep corners where you have exchange of high degrees of freedoms, heavy degrees of freedoms like heavy quarks, etc. These are typical diagrams describing the rare decays. So there's no tree-level contribution, and it has to go through second order weak interactions. They are very suppressed in the standard model. If there is a piece that, in addition to the standard model, some kind of new physics hidden that cannot be reached directly because you don't have enough energy in the center of mass, perhaps will show up in these loops. And then your measurement will not agree with the standard model prediction. So that's the way that we are using rare chaos decays in order to investigate high energy physics. Among the many rare decays, there's one in particular, which is studied by Na62, and is a K plus going into a pi plus in a pair of neutrino and antineutrino. This is a very special decay, very important because can be precisely determined in the standard theory. As you can see here, is a very small number, 10 to the minus 11 or so, with a number here, which basically is the hadronic part, normalized to the standard semi-leptonic decay. And as you can see, the error, the theoretical error is rather small, a few percent with respect to the mean value. So that gives an idea about how robust the theory is. And so it's an observable, which is worth investigating as well as one can. The rest here is expressed in terms of parameters the Kabibo-Kobayashi-Maskawa quark mixing matrix, and with some powers of these elements. And so you're really you can determine these parameters from B physics, for instance, and then you have a firm prediction, and you can check this firm prediction with the experiment. And this is, let's say, the baseline standard model. You can see the error is mostly, this error is larger than this, is mostly of parametric origin, and will presumably become even smaller in the next few years. Beyond the standard model, that's where so I mentioned there might be some contributions beyond the standard model, and depending on how constrained your model beyond the standard model is, you can have enhancement of reduction of this measured branching ratio. Now, in this chart, you see the correlation between two of these very rare decays. One is a K long to pi 0 nu bar, the other is the K plus pi plus nu bar, and this is the one studied by NA62. Now, beyond the standard model, most extension of it predict some contributions in the affecting the branching ratio, minimal flavor violation, simplified models with extra Z or Z primes, lepton flavor universality violation, and more other leptoquarks, for instance, minimal supersymmetric standard model. So that's why this physics, very elegant, is important to be studied as well as one can make it. And the state of the art before NA62 is summarized in this picture. This effort and endeavor that lasted several decades and culminated with the measurements made at Brookhaven by experiment 787 and 949 using decays are addressed. And this is the result of many years of work, and is tantalizing higher than the standard model, although the statistical error is large, but it's certainly this mean value and this type of experiment has certainly motivated the community, and me in particular, I must say, to try to see how to improve these measurements at CERN. Now, let me just open a parenthesis. I have to tell you how I came to meet Jürgen at FNAL around 1995. So the story is that in 1995, I applied to become a CERN scientific associate. But I was told that I was too young to become an associate, but they would be happy to give me a fellowship, which was even better because it was 2 years instead of 1. But my INFN bosses were not really happy about me going to CERN, so they sent me in exile to Fermilab for 6 months before letting me go on leave. The mission at FNAL was to rebuild the mirrors for a Cherenkov counter. Now, it turned out that unfortunately, because of a runaway oven, the carbon fiber mirror substrate was destroyed, and that was really unfortunate. But so the Cherenkov could not be built, but I did other things, and at least I studied KTEV and SELEX, and then I met a world-leading mirror expert for rich detectors. And the expert was Jürgen. As you can see, he had a rich field of activities at Fermilab in those years, attracting interesting characters and smiley and happy and hardworking as usual. This is a picture of the SELEX reach, and I just want to show this picture where Jürgen has always been hands-on. And that is true both for his hardware contributions and for the software contribution. Now, NA62 was proposed in 2005 as a proposal number 326. And the way you do it is that the day before the open presentation, you meet the referees and they ask questions. And so they were meeting the referees, the SPSC referees, and we had 3 presentations. One was preparing the slides for the open session, so my slides. There was a a talk by Giuseppe Ruggero concerning background rejection and signal acceptance, and a talk by Jürgen Engelfried and Peter Cooper concerning a pion reach for P326. So you can see that contributions of Jürgen were starting from the conception of the proposal of the experiment, and certainly Jürgen and Peter gave us a very much confidence that reach could be a good solution to strengthen the pion-muon separation in this rare decay experiment. And so that was the presentation, the outline, the pion reach velocity spectrometer for P326. And you can see the two authors still together 11 years later, and they are still together today, another few years more, let's say another 5 years. And it's always the same nice, strong smile on Jürgen's face that motivates and excites and doubles the stamina of everyone. So let me close this first parenthesis and bring to the NA62. So it's the decay in flight experiment. It is housed in the north area at CERN. And as you can see here, it's kind of a center of CERN. I mean, the cyan is the LHC ring, and then you have the SPS, which is the injector of the LHC, but it's also a bona fide accelerator to do a research program, the fixed target program. There's in this area, there's an A62, there's COMPASS, so the muons, the kaons, the ions, at fixed target. The A62 is shown here. It's not a small experiment. The green here is, the red is the direction of the beam coming through from over there. It's an underground area, and this is the reach. And so it's not a small experiment. It had to be kept a kind of secret for many years to make sure that it would not steer too much interest before it worked. And let me just briefly explain you how an A62 works. So we have in this chart, gives you an idea about the dimension. These are meters. It's meter also on the lateral scale, which is dictated by the PT of decay on decay, while the longitudinal scale is dictated by the lifetime of the kaon. And in order to collect a sufficient number of kaons, one has to have a decay region of about 60 meters to collect 10% of the decays. The secondary beam is a positive beam from the SPS, 75 GeV, 1% momentum byte. These are the characteristics. Only 6% of the beam is kaons, but all the particles have to be tracked. You can have an idea about the size of the beam, which is a few centimeters. It's about 20 square centimeters. It's here. And the 400 GeV protons are striking a beryllium target and providing this beam. Technology had to be invented in order to do tracking of this beam, because this is a non-separated beam. You could not have a separated beam like in the design of the previous design of CKM Fermilab. But you can have a lot of details. There were a lot of things that were studied. And if you are interested, you can go to this paper where the detector is described in great detail. So the idea is that the beam is selected, it's passing through a differential Cherenkov counter where the kaons are tagged. There's a beam tracker made by silicon pixel detectors and dipole magnets to measure the momentum of each single particle. And although only 6% of the beam is kaons, only 10% of those will usefully decay in the decay region. One has to track all of them because we have no idea what the right track, which the right track is. And so this silicon pixel detector that we call the Giga Tracker has to track 1 gigahertz of particles. That's why the name is such. And this was a development made explicitly for an A62. It was a great result. We have counters to veto the inelastic interactions here. We have large angle vetos to surround the tank, and those are made, as you will see, by lead glass. And then straw trackers in the vacuum tank. ring image and Cherenkov counter, liquid krypton calorimeter in the forward region to block all photons, muon VTOS, hadron calorimeters, and other smaller counters. And there's about 5 megahertz of K plus decay rates. And everything has to be kept in a very good vacuum so that there are no interactions of these unwanted interactions of these particles with the residual gas. Let me just briefly show a few of these pictures. And so for of the detector, this is the Giga tracker. It's a 65 picosecond time resolution on a track. The thing is, this is still a state-of-the-art beam tracker with the resolved time resolved pixels. And if we wanted to upgrade an A62, this would need to be upgraded. The SPS could deliver more beam than what we are taking at the moment. And so upgrading the beam detector would allow one to collect more statistics. That would be great. All right, so let me move on. And what you see here are the straw tracker on A62. That's really Swiss watchmaking, collaboration of CERN and GINR. This is during the installation. They are operated under the vacuum. This is in its full glory, the ring imaging Cherenkov counter, which in an A62 is meant to do pi mu separation. It's very clean, very good time resolution, and has been essential in order to have undisputable particle identification in conjunction with the calorimeters. One has to stop lots of pi zeros because the main background is K plus to pi plus pi zero, and the pi zero decays into photons, so you have to basically hermetically cover the entire phase space. And the LED glass is actually coming from the Opal experiment that Professor Wagner was talking about before. So it's a great example of how things are reutilized. And the electrostructure, what you see on the left-hand side is the electrostructure of the krypton calorimeter, which is the calorimeter of the NA48 experiment, which was the experiment measuring epsilon prime over epsilon. And this is now used by NA62. It's liquid krypton, and the vessel with the krypton inside has been kept cold since 1998. Can you believe? 23 years. So it's a very stable object and still state-of-the-art in terms of resolutions. So now let me open another small parenthesis. And once an A62 was built, a strong analysis team had to be put in place. And Jürgen's team competencies and leadership were evident since a long time, as you can see. You recognize distinguished members of our community here. And you see, always at the center of the action, even in the picture, is Jürgen. With always the same smile and always the same stamina. And so it was obvious to me that in order to have a good analysis preparation and making sure that the quality of the data would be good, Jürgen had to be part of this team. And so that's how Jürgen came and stayed on site at CERN for 2 years. And he has been chairing and this important working group together with Karim Masri, who's the physics coordinator now of an A62. And you can see that this is a kickoff meeting that was 2016 data taking. So it was towards the end of the data taking of the first real year, end of the commissioning of an A62. And that was really crucial to have then Jürgen at CERN for 2 years. And it was really, really remarkable contribution that was provided. And I must say, the working group has been very active and long-lived, and is still regularly meeting, and it has been going on so during the long shutdown at CERN. And I must say, I'm really impressed how this working group has carried through the task. And it's really, really important. And there would be no way that Jürgen would stop putting his nose inside other people's software or finding out things. So it's just very, very useful to have a Jürgen type of person. And because no stone will be left unturned. And still is going strong, and data quality is still regularly meeting. I'm sure Jürgen had to give a talk earlier this week at 2 a.m. his time at the collaboration meeting as chair of this working group, and the work will continue presumably for a long time. So let me now briefly tell you about the measurements we made. I will not go through many measurements, just one, the pi nu bar one, because there's no the scope of this presentation. But these are the idea is that this is a very difficult experiment. There's a kaon of which you try to measure as much as you can. So the kaon with particle identification, differential Cherenkov counter, the direction and the momentum. And then this pion comes out and nothing else. You have to hermetically be sure that there's no escaping particle, no pi zero, no extra charge particles, no four-body decays. And you have to suppress these things to have order of magnitude so that you can compete and go and see this very tiny standard model contribution. What you see here is the Dalitz plot. Basically, the idea is to plot as a function of the momentum of the charged particle. You plot the square of the missing mass, computed assuming that the charged particle is a pion. If a mistake is made and the pion is and the muon is mistaken as a pion, then you see that the square missing mass goes into the unphysical negative region here. The signal regions are shown here, region 1 and region 2. They are hatched and blinded. The data, the regions here where the analysis cannot be performed are where the pi is, the 3 pi up there, while 3 and 4 body decays can scan across the entire acceptance. And so one needs to have extra rejection of extra particles and other tricks. So the data so far collected so far were collected 2016, 2017, 2018. What is shown here is the result based on the 2018 data. The 2018 was separated in 2 parts, subset 1 and subset 2. Subset 2 is strengthening the final collimator in position and having thus even further suppression of backgrounds. And altogether, you can see that an expectation of about 7.5 signal events for a background of about 5 events was expected. The analysis was done completely blind. And the result, this is scatter plot concerning once the box will open. There were 17 events in the 2018 data. And this is the way the events are distributed, taking into account, putting together also the events from the previous year. So 1 candidate in 2016, 2 candidates in 2017, and 17 candidates in 2018. And you can see here 2016, this is the expectation and the standard model expectations and the measurements. There's good agreement with the standard model. This is the measurement, and it's been accepted for publication in JHAP. And you can see that is rather close to the standard model 8. So we have to continue collecting lots of data to see if there are deviations from the standard model. And this plot basically is it's an historical plot. It shows you a nice convergence of the experiment and the theory. So far, the standard model rules, and we will need much more data to get pin down effects at the level of 10 or 20%. Now, good news is that NH62 resumes the data taking already in July, July 2021. It is approved to run until the end of the long shutdown 3, so which is tentatively the end of 2024. Schedule at CERN is dictated by the LHC, and we are the lucky ones because we already start this year, while the LHC only starts back next year. So at least we will have a busy summer and a busy fall. Dear Jürgen, congratulations for turning 60. I can assure you the best is still to come. And I'm looking forward to many more decades of research together and to exciting collaboration meeting in Mexico, like the memorable one in 2019. Thank you very much. Viva Mexico.
Hi. Thank you, Augusto. Nice picture from the dinner.
Thank you very much, Augusto. We are already celebrating here with mezcal.
Thank
Thank you very much for your beautiful talk.
Thank you.
So we need to see more pictures of that celebration of 2019.
Yes. What's the collaboration meeting which we had in Playa del Carmen? Yeah.
I can show it to you, but privately.
Hi, Irene.
Irene, hi.
Yes, so this was very nice. The picture you showed, the first picture, there was also Marco Reyes on that picture. The other Mexican who just tries to join NA62. He is on that picture as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, Marco Antonio Reyes Santos is the one you're saying?
Yes.
He sends Feliz Cumpleaños.
Okay, thank you. That's exactly the one. Friend of mine.
I'd like to add one thing of clarification to justify my reaction when the name Ferrara was mentioned at the beginning of the talk. And the thing is that I never ever worked in Ferrara, but somehow people think I am from Ferrara. Now I have to explain why.
Yes, I know.
There are several reasons. The first reason is that my wife is from Ferrara, and she was assistant professor there. But there's another reason. And the reason is that at a certain point, because once I went to CERN, it was clear that I would not go back to INFN. And so people made a swap of posts within INFN. So the trial was to bring me to Ferrara, so that where my wife was, so maybe I would stay there. And then Roberto Musa, one of the guys on the picture of the soccer team, and also the first picture, who was originally from Torino, like me, who got to Torino. So the swap was made. So this is why there's this misunderstanding.
Sorry.
And yes, and
no
Bombo is on, Bombo is on both pictures.
And if you ask everybody, they will tell you I'm from Ferrara, which is not true.
And Bombo is on both pictures, yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, they failed because I didn't go back to Ferrara. I stayed at CERN, and the rest is history.
So there was a question on the chat from Felipe Rosales asking what are the specifications of the calorimeters in the detectors?
The specifications?
That's what the question says, yes.
Yeah. So first of all, it's the specifications of the liquid krypton calorimeter was mostly dictated by the specifications of the previous experiment, which needed to measure epsilon prime over epsilon, for which we needed stability, and the liquid is very stable and cryogenic. So 0.5% constant term energy resolution, excellent timing resolution, 300 picoseconds per photon. Don't forget that was 25 years ago. energy resolution of the order of 3% of square root of E for the stochastic term, and small noise, and also very good position resolution, like a few millimeters over square root of E. And the specifications for the lead glass, the other calorimeters, were basically the specifications of the opal experiment, because we recovered from opal. And so we just used what we found, because the idea was to use much higher performance calorimeters following the design of Peter Cooper and in the CKM design. But we didn't have the money for that. So one day I bumped into this lead glass from opal, and I was looking for some phototubes. And then I spoke to a colleague said, go and talk to Kawamoto-san from Tokyo. So I went, and he brought me down underground, and there were crates and crates and crates full of crystals. And I told him, what about those crystals? And said, well, we don't know what to do. We want to junk them. I said, stop. Just sign here that we can use them. And within a week or two, we appropriated the crystals. And then the rest was, twisting the arm of the collaborators and telling, but that I had to do many cases, say, don't worry, no, don't worry. We know you want to do something which is much better. But we instead we use this, because otherwise we don't do the experiment. It's just, if you really want to do something, you have to use all those type of tricks. Like for the Giga Tracker, we had two designs, an INFN design and a CERN design. And the INFN design was probably superior, but it was too complex for my taste. And luckily, it didn't work in the test beam. So I had to go to the colleague of mine, my mentor, my greatest mentor, Flavio Marchetto, and kindly ask him, Flavio, not only we would like you to support the CERN design, we would also like you to pay for it. He was from INFN, and he told me, well, just because you're my friend, otherwise it would be. So as you can understand, once you do this type of tricks to people, after a few years, you're left with no friends. But experiment. So
I see.
That's it.
Augusto, you have friends.
Yeah.
You still
Good.
have friends, yes.
Good.
Don't worry.
Good.
So how many people are there in total in NA62?
It depends how you count them. It depends whether they need to be many or they need to be few. So if you count them as you count the large experiments, is about 250 people. But I would say the core is about 70 or 80 people, really, the core. The number of people attending the meetings has been increasing. If you notice, now we have 50, 60 people attending weekly meetings, which is a lot of people. And the number of young people is also increasing, I would say.
And does this experiment, does it has another name? Because calling it NA62 sounds like...
Yeah, well, that's done on purpose to make sure that it does not attract too much interest. You have to survive, and if you're too visible, they chop heads. So but I call it the Keon factor, CERN Keon factory, and then maybe if we continue, we call it with a fancier name. Maybe Clever is a good name. I don't know.
But you saw the first transparency. There's a photo with the street sign which leads to the experiment, and it's called the Keon factory.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it, because it's really a Keon factory. Yeah.
And it took this is an officially certified CERN sign. So in order to get it, it took a while. It has to go through all CERN traffic and whatever. It's an officially certified sign. And,
you said something like
you cannot just at CERN. You cannot just put up, a sign like that. There are roads, things. So I would call it the kiln factory.
You said 5 million kilns per second, right?
Yeah, 5 million decays per second of beam. Yeah, of course. Then the beam is only on 30% of the time. But that's a lot of. You know, we would like to have more, to crank it up a bit, hopefully.
And CERN right now, is it open for business?
Yeah, we are open. They're about just to tell you the size of CERN. There are 4,200 people entering CERN every day, which is about 50% of the normal. There's a huge community of contractors, subcontractors, users, etc. And there are the useful ones, technicians, engineers, they can enter. And then there are the physicists like me, and we have to stay out. But soon we will go back.
Okay.
Yes, as I hope they will let me in 2 weeks' time. Yeah.
Well, we can check it right away.
You can check, yeah. So you can do something.
Yeah.
So I asked Veronique to do something. So hopefully something worked. Yeah. Because it would be difficult to switch on the experiment without being there.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have to cut now. We can continue talking offline. And thank you very much, Augusto, for this super interesting company talk.
Thank you very much.
We'll meet in 3 weeks to share real wine and real tea.
Look, very good. You see, Jürgen, you're allowed in.
I'm allowed in.
Yeah.